money, that I have found, when you and I spoke previously, I was a first-time author, and I have found that if you want to publicize your book, the way to do it is on shows like yours, broadcast, podcasts. You're a network, which is a whole different thing, but radio stations, podcast, broadcast. And the reason being is that, on social media, one session with Gary or whoever on a radio program or a podcast, you can reach thousands of people. Whereas you could be on Facebook the rest of your life and spend 24/7, sending out emails to people, and you won't reach anywhere near the amount of potential audience that you can through shows like yours. It's just a reality. So what I tell people, and what I'm hopeful anybody who wants to do it takes away from this, is, one, you got to do a lot of work as an author, but if you're going to focus your energy on doing that, you should focus it on shows like yours and the broadcast media. We used to, in marketing, call it hydraulic pressure, where you put a certain amount of pressure at the front end of the pipe, and it's greatly magnified coming out the back end. That's broadcast. And so if I have found nothing else about this process, it's that. And anybody who's thinking about doing it should be aware that, you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars, break your heart, and spend all your time fiddling around on social media, and you're not going to get nearly the push for your work as you are on broadcast media.
Well, so, Wayne, you said that perfect, because I will tell you, back a year ago or a year and a half ago, if you posted something on Facebook, let's say you had 1,000 friends. A year and a half ago, you post something, close to your 1,000 friends would see it. Now, if you have and I'm just using this as an example. Let's say you have 1,000 friends now and you post something up, okay, like your new book. Maybe out of 1,000 people, maybe 5, 10 might see it, because the way how it works on Facebook, this a small percentage of your friends ever see your posting.
Yep, they've changed all the algorithms on that because, well, I know what their public statement is. I have my own views on it, but yeah, you're right. So you may feel good about putting together thousands of friends or whatever, on any form of social media. And you're absolutely right. And most people don't know that you post something and maybe 1% of your followers are going to actually see it. So not only have you broken your heart to put together a big following, or at least you think it's a big following, but when you actually post something where all that work is supposed to communicate to people what you're doing, you got nothing, So yeah.
Well,
one thing that I'm
like you're getting on different podcasts, different radio shows. You have to do it. Even my show, when I first started out, after being in retirement, and my friend talked me in getting back into, broadcasting, it's a little different back then because, I wasn't working for somebody. I didn't get a paycheck every week doing my show. Whatever money I made was either donations or from having advertisers. And I tell you what, it was hard to build up from 10 people to 1,000 to 10,000 to, I won't even tell anybody what I am because they don't believe it, but I'm on 34 stations now. And I have worked my fanny off. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And other than picking up my daughter from work in the afternoon and spending 2 hours away from my studio, I'm up from 5 o'clock in the morning, usually to like 10 o'clock weeknights, working on my show after my show, booking people, promoting my show every which way I can. And then on Saturdays, I'm probably putting in even more hours in. You have to put a lot of hours in. Otherwise, people don't find you nowadays.
Well, it's really true. And the great part about what you've built out is that it's real. I mean, when you say you've got X number of stations or outlets and you've got so many listeners, you really have them. And when something goes out through your network, it goes out to your audience. It doesn't go out to 1% of them. And, you go back to the old days in in radio, and got something to talk to you about that here in a minute. But there was a guy who you would have loved. In fact, I wrote a story about him, which is going to be in my second book. And he was quite a character, and he had this beach home in Malibu. And one day we were working, and he was one of the hardest working guys I ever met. He worked like you work. I mean, this guy worked all the time. And he set himself a goal of 150 calls a day. So he'd start out in the morning calling New York, and we were in California. And then he'd roll across the country. He sold media and various things, and would end up in Hawaii. And the guy put in these hideously long days, and he would not stop until he made at least 150 calls. And so one day, we're working down there, and I was a lot younger than him at the time, and I had to really work hard to keep up with him. So one day he comes to me and he says, "Hey, we got NBC coming in. Let's go upstairs." And so we were working in a guest house, and he had a big house on the beach there. And so we went upstairs, sat on the balcony, and he goes in and changes his clothes and comes back out in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts and flip-flops. and I'm looking at him. I thought, what? And he had a phone there by his chair. And so in come these dudes from NBC, and we're sitting there, and it's a day in Malibu, and the gulls are carrying on, and the sky's blue, and the water's lapping, and these guys come in from New York, and they're looking at him going, "Is this where you work?" And this guy, Frank, looks at them, and he says, "Yeah, he says, it's the darndest thing. I just kind of sit around here, and the phone rings, and I get contracts, and it's a pretty good way to live." And I tell you, Gary, if the alien had popped out of his belly, I couldn't have been looking at him any more strangely. I mean, I thought, what a load of baloney this is. So when these guys left after giving him a big deal, I said, "What was that?" And he said, "Listen, Wayne, people don't want to hear it. By and large, people don't want to hear that if you want to win, you have to put in the time and put in the hours and put in the work." And, I found that most to be true. So, you're giving some good advice. And like I say, if I can give any advice to up-and-coming authors, be prepared to promote. I don't care who you're signed with. Publishers, it's very different out there now. And publishers, even the big dogs, just don't provide the services and support that they used to. And there's a lot of really good publishers out there who are great, but they're smaller. And so they rely on an author to beat their own bushes quite a bit. And, the image is that you write 50 Shades of Grey and suddenly you've made $100 million. That ain't how it works. Any more than, pulling that lever on the machine and you hit 3 sevens. It happens sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But it's unusual. It's not the norm.
Well, one thing, Wayne, I tell people, I see a couple companies, I'm not going to mention who they are, on media, that they basically say, "Hey, send us your manuscript. We will put it together and get it back to you in a book form in a week." And they want thousands of dollars. And you know what? There's gullible people out there. They take their whole life savings pretty much. They think they have a hot book. They get a couple hundred copies of their book, and then they don't know what to do with them. And they're sitting in their house for who knows how many years propping up stuff to keep it, I don't know. But anytime you have to pay a lot of money out, you better watch out. The other thing that really scares me is so many people are now doing self-published books out there, and it's like more than ever. And blame that also on the media. Everybody wants to write a book. I hate to say it, not everybody, buddy. Like years ago, people used to read books. Like my wife was crazy. She would go buy a new book every couple of days and she would read it. I haven't seen her read a book in a couple of years because people go on to, Facebook, they go on to all these other things and they don't read like they used to. But these people will put their whole life savings for, to do a book. Then they think, hey, I'm going to put it on Facebook and I'm going to sell thousands of copies. It's not going to happen, people. I'm sorry. I'm being honest and blunt with you. You got to do what Wayne is doing and all the other people that come out. 50% of it is writing your book. The other 50% is going out and selling it.
You are absolutely correct. And then you got to hope that the 50% of the writing part, that you write good work. I got very unpopular on an author's forum. There's probably 300 people there who all are riding in the car you're talking about.
Uh-oh, we just lost him. Well, we're going to have to get him back. I wonder what happened. That is the problem with Skype. Okay, well, we'll try again here.
Did we lose each other?
Yeah, I think Skype just decided to say goodnight, but we're back.
Okay, and thank you. And anyway, I was saying that I got very unpopular on one author's forum because there was a gentleman who posted a thing about, how do I increase my following on Facebook and how can I sell my book and this and that. And I wrote back and I said, well, the first thing is that before you even spend the time and effort to do that, you got to work with good editors or have pre-publication reviews and make sure your work is good. It isn't enough just to sit down and write, 300 pages of stuff no one wants to read. There's only so much lipstick you can put on the pig. So that's the first step. You got to be, you got to have conviction, not only conviction, but other people reading your work that might be very important to you who'll come back and say, yeah, I really like this. That's first step. Then you go out and you promote it. And I'm going to give any artists out there, authors, a couple of tips now about how to avoid that, because you are right on target. Anybody who asks you for money to do some of this stuff, run for the hills. It's a deal that we call is out there to fatten the ego and slim the wallet.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a program out there called Odyssey, and it's kind of like Word, Microsoft's Word, but it's made for authors. And it will take your work and it will format it into book form, ready for publication, ready to go. And then if you want, you can go to some of these companies that will print to order, not a vanity press, but just and for a nickel on the dollar, a penny on the dollar, you can send them your manuscript. And there's even places out there where you can get templates for a cover, and you can put all this together yourself. You don't need to pay somebody to do it. And if what you want to do is publish a bunch of copies of books, and then try and promote them and sell them yourself, not get picked up by a publisher, that's the way to go. And you're not going to be paying some vanity press who will pat you on the head and tell you this is the next Sun Also Rises, when in fact they just want your money. And there's nothing wrong with people wanting money or making sales, but to do it, I think it's a bit like one of these unscrupulous TV preachers. I think to take money from someone knowing that you're just hammering them, or what they're providing in terms of their work doesn't have a prayer, I think it's immoral. And those kind of folks are out there everywhere.
And it reminds me of the old Three Stooges, one of the movies where they go into attorney. It's called I Fleecing You. And that's what it is in the book world. Yeah. I will say this. A year ago, I had a publisher get a hold of me and said, this guy wants to be on your show. I won't tell you. It was about monsters. I won't tell you about what type of monster. The guy, and his publisher for like 2 months emailed me every single day. I have him on the show. I get him on the show, and I start asking questions about his book. And the first thing goes, well, I don't want to say much because then people won't buy it. And I'll be honest with you. It was about like Walking Dead.
Sorry,
it was about vampires. I'm not going to mention the guy's book. So, I asked him, well, can you, tell me a little about it? And he goes, well, it's about a boy and a sister. That's all I could get out of him. So for an hour, I had to talk about, The Walking Dead. I had to talk about, the Dawn of the Dead. All these things to fill this hour up because he wouldn't talk about his book. how, and then at the end of the show, I was really sweating bullets for that hour. I asked, well, how many copies have you sold? And he goes, in the past year? I go, yeah, I sold one to a friend. And I'm going, oh, wow, I don't even know how he got on my show.